You, yes you, get over here. Sit down, lay back, get comfortable, get a nice drink, possibly of liquid H2O, and let's have a talk about the ever-evolving landscape of the video games industry. Let's talk about backwards compatibility. This is a topic very near and dear to my heart, because I've gotten burned on this subject before, multiple times by the way. But what is backwards compatibility? Backwards compatibility is very simple. It is the ability for a newer console to be able to play games from earlier consoles of that same style. So, the PS3, at least initially, with the fat versions, was able to play PS1 and PS2 games, but later iterations of the PS3 lost this capability. So, if you got rid of your PS1 and PS2 because your PS3 was capable of playing all of your old games, and then your PS3 broke so you got another one, but you found out, oh wait, this version doesn't play backwards compatible, so now all of a sudden you have a veritable smorgasbord of games that you just no longer have a way to play. And if you're also me, where when the PS4 came around, your PS3 decided to stop working in one way or the other, so now you have 3 generations of games you grew up with that you just no longer have access to. They're just sitting collecting dust in the corner as you think about the glory times of Sly Cooper and Ratchet & Clank and Infamous. Also, Ed, Edd n Eddy's Misadventures. If you played that game, you had good tastes. But backwards compatibility has been a bit of a sticking point for many companies and consoles at various points in time. Now, you may not remember this, but when they announced the Xbox One, it didn't have backwards compatibility with the Xbox original or the 360. It was a major sticking point for quite a long time. And coupled with all of the bad PR Xbox self-imposed on themselves at that time, we've seen what Xbox has become since. But ever since those dark days, Xbox has been kind of putting their nose down to the grindstone to make sure that all the old, or at least most of them, old Xbox games from whatever generation in the past are playable on the new hardware. Backwards compatibility is a feature, and for even some games, they offer higher resolutions and frame rates for free. And if you are someone who likes to play older games and you have a collection of old Xbox games, that can be an enticing offer, but it is kind of niche. And backwards compatibility can be more niche than we may think sometimes. Simple fact of the matter is that a lot of people just don't play old games anymore. They prefer the newest and greatest compared to playing yesterday's glory hits. People only have so much money and so much time in the day, and I can't fault people for that. Play what you like. But I will argue that having the option to be able to play backwards compatible is better than not having the option at all. And there's been a massive seismic shift in the industry ever since the Xbox One PS4 generation onwards, and Phil Spencer talked about this a little bit ago. By a little bit ago, I mean a couple months ago. And he was talking about how the Xbox lost the console wars between the Xbox One and the PS4, and that was one of the most important generations to win because people were really starting to rapidly develop digital libraries. Very much in the vein of what PC gaming has had on offer for quite a long time with Steam. And with digital games, there's a feel to them that you don't really get from physical media, where it's like, okay, I have this game digitally, I should always be able to play this game, even when I upgrade my PC. Which makes sense, but that mentality started to shift on over to console gaming as well. And then you had Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo just kind of scratch their heads going, crap, we're not in the best position to suit this mentality. PlayStation for generations has had wild tales of its architecture. The PS3 is notorious for this, and for having games and just overall architecture that's painstakingly annoying to emulate or port. So when the PS5 rolled around, PlayStation kind of just said, okay, hey guys, don't worry, you can play your PS4 games on this thing. And the veracity of their argument in defense of not having PS1 to PS3 backwards compatibility aside, what they elected to do instead was to offer it as a feature to get you to be incentivized to buy a higher tier of PlayStation Plus, so you had access to some of the old games, but not all of them. And otherwise, you would have to buy those games all over again. Isn't that swell, having to buy a game you've already bought, even for the same family of consoles? Great feeling, love that actually. But when it comes to the newer games, PS4 onwards, if you have a PS4 game, chances are you can just slash that disc into the PS5, it's gonna work. Some games offer you a free version upgrade for better performance or whatever, and some you have to buy it. Some games you just have to buy the PS5 version separately. Persona 5 Royal, I'm looking at you, even if you have the original already. Nintendo may be in the most awkward position in this regard, in regards to physical media, because, well, Nintendo over the years has elected to do some wacky things when it comes to the way they deliver a game to you. They've hopped between cartridges to discs, and all over the place. They've had GameCube discs that are perfectly average sized in terms of both length and girth. They're able to satisfy the consumer, quite pleasurably so, if I may add. And honestly, discs don't need to go any bigger than that, let's be honest. And then in comparison, the Wii discs were the bad dragons of freaking Nintendo games. But then remember the Wii U, which may be hard because I'm pretty sure 7 people in the entire world, myself as one of those 7, actually have a Wii U. But the Wii U used discs as well, and you were able to play those Wii games backwards compatibly. And the Wii was even able to play GameCube games backwards compatibly, because they used similar architecture. Just have fun trying to shove a N64 cartridge into the thing. But then lo and behold, the Switch came around and we go back to cartridges again. There's no disc slot, so you have all these older games, and if you have gotten rid of your Wii U for whatever reason, or you don't have one, well then, tough. And I can't exactly fault Nintendo for going the cartridge route for the Switch. It makes sense. The Switch was the console designed to be able to be played at home or on the go as a mobile device, and the functionality and size and shape of the cartridges for the Switch better suit travel than, say, a disc. It's just one of those unfortunate realities that I'm not going to get that mad over, but just, it is a shame that backwards compatibility has to suffer in that regard, and then they go the Sony route. If you want to play those older games, or at least some of those older games from consoles of years gone by, well, I hope you like Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pass, because that's going to be your methodology for doing so, if you don't already own these older consoles. And ever since my PlayStation fiasco of years gone by, I haven't thrown away a console yet, because I want to be able to play all my games. And while I may have a giant stack of PS1 to PS3 games I just don't really have access to right now. Well, I have access to my PS3 games now, because I found a working PS3, but I have all these PS1 and PS2 games I just can't do anything with. So what's the point of all this rambling? What's the point of all this yapping, right? I think backwards compatibility is an important issue in the video game medium, especially when it comes to game preservation. Because let's be real here, let's be honest. Sometimes crap breaks. Consoles may break in one way or the other, whether or not they can even turn back on again, they get red ringed to death, maybe the disk drive breaks, or whatever. Stuff happens. So being able to play your older games on newer hardware, for me, is always a plus if it's viable. If it's a situation like Nintendo where it's like, okay, we're designing a console to be hybrid, and cartridges just kind of make more sense, for that, I can understand that. I think that's a reasonable argument. Sometimes sacrifices need to be made, and sure, I would have liked to have seen maybe a separate accessory, like a separate little disk drive, just for backwards compatibility. That would have been cool. I'm not gonna kick up a massive stink about it, you know? I think Sony is the biggest annoying aspect in all this, because PlayStation, even from the PS1 all the way to the modern day, uses discs. It's just the internal architecture for the PS3 is so wildly stupid that it makes everything so complicated. But it's not even like the PS5 can't run older games. They sell them to you. And this is a mentality that I genuinely hate, is the idea of, even if you have these older games digitally or in terms of physical media, especially for PlayStation, because they use discs, it is so egregious to try and make the player buy them again. If I never owned the game to begin with, yeah, sure, I don't mind buying it again, or buying it. But if I already own it, then you're just trying to double dip me, while trying to find some way, somehow, to add value and apparent incentive to justify the prices of the higher echelons of your online service, like PS Plus or Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pass. You're just finding things to shove and cram in there to justify and nudge people in that direction instead of the more cheaper base options. And funnily enough, I don't think Xbox gets a lot right on the whole. especially when it comes to games themselves anymore. But one of the things that I think they genuinely do incredibly is backwards compatibility. It's not every game, and they've even said they've had to go back one by one, essentially, making sure that these games can run on newer hardware. But they did that work, and they're available for free. And you can make the argument they're playing catch-up because of all the mistakes they've undergone and suffered from their own volition, and yeah, I agree. I think they are trying to win back goodwill, and to shove PR in a better direction for them. And I'll admit, it's a good way to do it. Knowing that I don't have to go and drudge up my old Xbox 360, I can just play all my 360 games on my Xbox One relatively painlessly. I might just have to do a download or something, but that's whatever. But I have access to them. I can play them. I don't feel like I'm being punished for going to a newer console. And I wouldn't say this is the biggest issue in the games industry nowadays. I wouldn't say that, but I also don't think an issue needs to be the biggest thing to be able to be talked about, and for a discussion to be had on these topics. Is there a workaround? Yeah, just keep your older consoles, but like I said, sometimes they break, sometimes things happen. And I think when available, just being able to play your older games on newer hardware is a strict net positive for the consumer, which is what I really care about. Now, when it comes to the future, I don't see backwards compatible being an issue in the future, because I don't see consoles from here on out not being backwards compatible from the Xbox One, PS4 series onwards. Like, I don't believe for a second that the next Nintendo console won't have backwards compatibility with the Switch. I do not see how it won't. Because, like I talked about at the beginning of this video, like Phil Spencer said, everyone started to develop digital libraries of games. And the expectation for a digital game is fundamentally different than a physical game. Because that media that no longer applies, like it's not on a cartridge, it's not on a disc. The way I put the game on my console is no different. I just download it. Not like the disc drive can't read that. It's not that the cartridge is too small or too big for the port. The consumer has a digital library of games. They expect to be able to play those games in perpetuity. And it also makes sense for these game companies to have backwards compatibility because, again, like Phil Spencer said, that is a way you can lock people. I'm paraphrasing here. That is a way you can kind of lock people into your own ecosystem. If you played the PS4 during the PS4 Xbox One generation, then you probably have a big library of games with PlayStation. So, more likely than not, you are going to go to the PS5 instead of the Xbox Series console because your library carries over. And that's going to be a reality of the video games industry, for console gaming especially. That's going to be an important sticking point when we come up to like 2028, 2029, when we start to see Xbox and PlayStation probably put out new hardware at that time, if Xbox is still in the console game, which I expect they will be. Because the backlash any of these consoles will get, if the new one isn't backwards compatible, will be gigantic. Like, never say never, because sometimes these companies can be monolithically stupid, but the landscape is fundamentally different. I think Xbox provides by far the best backwards compatibility of the big three, but from here on out, I don't see these consoles not being backwards compatible in some shape or form. So yeah, certain cases suck, and suck more than others, but I do, funnily enough, believe this is one of those aspects of the video game industry that I just see getting better and better as time goes on. Like, I can't imagine that the PlayStation 6 won't be backwards compatible with PS5 and PS4 games, right? There's some sucky aspects to it to be sure, but on the whole, I'm optimistic for the future. And that's a nice feeling to have, especially for the video game industry at large, because we don't get to feel like that all too often. So yeah, but let me know how you feel in the comments down below. Has there been a moment in time where you've been really thankful that a game you voted is backwards compatible that you just really wanted to play, or have you gotten burned in this regard like I did with PlayStation before? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.